So today I'm going to talk about Dune and Firefly slash Serenity, basically in the context of, can Firefly be seen as a prequel of sorts to the Frank Herbert Dune stories? Obviously, Brian Herbert and KJA wrote plenty of prequels. More recently, for Frank Herbert's Dune, his original 6 Dune books, a lot of which I haven't read. I've only read one of the extended universe books for Dune, but and I don't really think that Joss Whedon and his team of writers for Firefly and Serenity were necessarily thinking about this like in the back of their heads. I don't think that it's like some kind of national treasure thing to uncover. It's more in the sense of like, is it valuable for perhaps the fan fiction community for either intellectual property to think about them as being connected in some way? Is there? And I'm not part of any kind of fan fiction community, but I love fandoms and I love people that are passionate about things. So maybe this will get the wheels turning in some people's brains about these two IPs and the similarities and differences that maybe can be played around with in future stories. The main similarity that they share, and I think that separates them from a lot of science fiction, maybe even a lot of hard science fiction, is the lack of aliens, in particular the lack of so-called humanoid aliens. So in a sense, like, both properties are sort of like the anti-Star Trek. In Star Trek there's like a new humanoid species like almost every episode, right? Like, by necessity, that's just how it's written, and it's fun, and it's like it can't be part of Star Trek, and you get to enjoy it if you love Star Trek like I do. So that would be number one. Number two would be this whole idea of, what does River Tam represent? Is she the first of like a sort of what will be a trend in either human evolution or human conditioning, if you will? Because in Dune, of course, the idea of the woman who can almost sort of read minds, who can, read auras, maybe, like whatever you want to say, the Bene Gesserit, where their main power is control of people with their voice, which is kind of like controlling them with their mind. Whatever you want to say about that, River definitely fulfills a lot of those ideas. River is a weirding woman, if you will, which is what the Fremen call Jessica when they meet her, because she can almost move faster than the eye can see to fight people, right? She's like she has some kind of command over her body, like a martial arts command, which is just out of this world. And of course, that, especially in Serenity, that's what is alluded to that River can do. Like the budget for Firefly wasn't so high that they could really put this kind of stuff in, even though I think she like kills a Reaver at one point or something, like off screen. But certainly in in Serenity, like, it's shown that she is almost superhuman in her physical abilities. So it's, she's both. She's, like, she can't move things with her mind, but she's like almost like a Jean Grey type character. Like going back to this archetype of, Jean Grey types, or like, just very like, almost goddesses on Earth, right? Like, Stranger Things obviously has like really gotten heavily into this, like with 11, like she, and they allude to it in Stranger Things. It's so fun. Like, my friend he's a big fan, and he was telling me that there's that allusion in, I don't know if it's the most recent season, I forget, but where they're talking about the first issue where Jean Grey becomes Phoenix, like in the show, as a sort of subtle nod that this is what they're doing. It's a big trope in sci-fi. So she's, River can be seen as a sort of proto Bene Gesserit, even maybe a proto Mentat, like a thinking computer. And in the comics, at least, the Firefly continuation comics, I've only read like the first trade paperback, so I don't know how far they've gone with this since then. It was pretty good. I enjoyed it. Obviously not enough to continue, but I'm kind of lazy about reading comics. Like I'll like pick something up and read it and then like put it down and come back to it, like, buy another one like 6 months or a year later. There are shown to be more young women like River, obviously being trained by those evil guys in the suits. It's been a while since I watched Firefly, but and it's you hope that like the Bene Gesserit, whatever their origins are, like you don't want it to be some kind of thing where it was like they were created by like this evil conspiracy or the government or something. But that's a big part of Firefly, right? Is the big conspiracy of the bad guys, the fascists. That the government isn't good, certainly in Firefly, in Serenity. What else do they have in common? Do the people remember Earth? I think that this is a big similarity because it's like the idea of Earth is still out there. It's like this faint, almost legend, like part of lore, if I remember correctly. In Firefly, they're always calling it like Earth that was, I think, right? In that intro, they talk about Earth that was, or something like that. And in Dune, I don't think a lot of people, like common people, know what Earth is or the idea, and it's not obvious that it still really exists, probably, but certainly like they have the so-called Orange Catholic Bible. The people who have prescience and memories of their like genetic memories, like Leto the Second or Aaliyah, like certainly they can remember Earth, and they can remember who their ancestors on Earth were, down to the person. So if anyone asks, like the knowledge is there. It's not common knowledge, but so this is like a similarity, like the idea of Earth, and people definitely came from Earth. Like that's a big thing. It's not it's not Star Wars where it's people originated somewhere else, like long before Earth. And likewise, it's not Star Trek, which is, or Stargate, or like the Alien franchise, where like seeds of humanity were sown by like people blasting energy into like protoplasm type thing. That idea is not really present in either franchise. But who knows? I mean, Firefly never really got to flesh out a lot of these ideas, but I think that the approach to Earth is sort of similar. Maybe one last thing is like the character of Malcolm. Mal, I don't know. He sort of fits into, he could fit into Dune. He's like the pirate captain with a heart of gold. And well, he's just really like a sci-fi trope, like on purpose, and he's like a great character, and like you love him because of that, because he's great for plots because he gets into trouble because he's so good-hearted, but like a tough guy. He could sort of fit into Dune, like even though he's like more of a cowboy, but like in Dune there is Gurney Halleck becomes like a smuggler at some point, like during the first book, and so that's like a like not a great connection, but there's something there. Mal being a cowboy like leads me to what's probably the biggest difference in the two, and this would be something fun to explore if you're doing like fan fiction. You can kind of like mash these things up. Is that in Firefly they're really drawing on American Western tropes, right? And Dune really isn't that. Dune is more drawing on like a sort of sword and sandals, for lack of a better term, like box of tropes. And so you have like either like a Indo-European fantasy influence in Dune versus like an American Western influence in these two sci-fi properties. So like right there, you would have to reconcile, like, or choose to not reconcile, like what, you know, just the sort of genre and the aesthetics of these two properties. There's certainly, like, in sci-fi, there's room for different kinds of characters, and it's fun when different genres are mashed up, as both these properties start being mashups in the sense, which is why they're so successful. Maybe, so I mentioned that no aliens, right? The other main difference, like, is of course there are aliens in Dune. They're on the cover of like almost every book. Like, let me see. They're definitely, well, they're on the cover of this one. I mean, he's a humanoid. Are they on the cover of this one? I guess not, right? But certainly on a lot of, let's see, certainly a lot of them they are. Not this one, because this is expanded universe, but you know, the worms are aliens. You know, there's no getting around it. Like, there's no aliens in Firefly. There are aliens in Dune, but they're not humanoid. They are. It's unclear if they're even sentient. It depends on your ideas about what sentient means. But like, they are native to Arrakis. They're not something that was brought there, as far as I know. They're not like something brought from Earth, certainly, because precisely the ecosystem of Arrakis is sort of based on them being the primary inhabitant. And there are other animals on Arrakis and other animals like on other planets, but they're all like mostly very similar to, if not imported, fauna from Earth. Like, you know, there's birds, there's dogs, there's mice. There's nothing else like the worms that we see, really. So that's fun to me. I mean, of course it's fun. It's what a lot of people think of when they think of Dune, is, you know, the giant worms. Even though, like, when you become a big Dune head, I feel like sometimes you don't even think about it, because you think about the politics and you think about the ramifications of the themes, right? Religion, you know, this kind of big heady stuff, which like makes it so much fun. But like, you know, and there's nothing like that in Firefly. There's nothing like the worms, purposefully, I believe, you know, because they wanted to see what you could write while only having humans as your antagonists. And so here's, like, you know, I don't know if this is a similarity or, you know, a difference. Maybe it's just something to think about, but because the worms are maybe not sentient necessarily, they're not the bad guys, right? I mean, they're a deity to the Fremen, who are the good guys, ostensibly, in the first book, at least. So who's the bad guy? Of course, it's humans, you know? Humans are the big bad in both series. Plotting humans, conspiring humans, you know, humans who don't care about other humans are the evil. Which it makes for good writing, I think, like, because, you know, there's no tricks, right? There's no, you know, even if a worm swallows you up, it's nature. It's not like it's, you know, not something that you can really get mad at, right? Whereas humans plotting against each other, the Harkonnens, and all the Harkonnens are not evil, right? Like, going back, they're just one of the great houses. Certainly the Harkonnens in the first book are evil, all the ones that we meet with that last name. So let's see, I think those are the big ones. I'd love to hear what you think. You know, I don't know if we're getting any more like real Firefly or Serenity in the future. I mean, if you haven't watched Firefly or Serenity and you're a Dune fan, please check it out. This is a great time to watch it. And likewise, if you're like a Firefly fan, Joss Whedon fan, and you haven't picked up Dune, you know, read it. If you don't have time to read it, go watch maybe the Sci-Fi series. It's on YouTube, the first one, I believe, or at least Children of Dune. The second one is on YouTube. It's findable anyway out there. It's not like, it's kind of low budget, so like, well, if you love Firefly, if you love 90s Star Trek, like it'll kind of remind you of that kind of stuff. If you love like the Phantom Menace, where like, you know, crummy 90s you know, special effects and stuff, like if you're nostalgic about that kind of thing, then you'll like the Dune Sci-Fi series, that the mini series from TV. Don't make David Lynch's your first foray into the Duneverse if you can avoid it, because it'll just be confusing. Like it's fun as for what it is, like as like an 80s thing, and the cast is amazing, but like it's I don't think it's a good entryway to that universe. All right, everyone, stay safe, be well, and I'll see you later. Thanks.